Hello viewers, yes, this is Ranjana ma'am and you're watching mine as well as your channel. And yes, I know the thumbnail says it all, but still I like to repeat the name again. It's the elevator. And before we start, you know, I always say it, you all must have got bored of it, but I don't get bored saying it again and again because yes, I love to say it. If you have not subscribed to my channel up till now, please do. And don't forget to press the like button. I think this is better, na? No, this, yes. Like button after you have watched the full video. It's not so boring, I assure you. So yes, the story elevator, it's a short one. The lift. So in these multiplex and high-rise buildings, lift is an indispensable part of our modern life. So here it is the story of a small boy, I wouldn't say very small, 12-year-old boy Martin and his fears. He seems to be suffering from claustrophobia or fear of, rather the fear, irrational fear of confined places. So getting inside the elevator and he feels, what if it stops in the middle? So these fears haunt him. And does he try to get out of it? No. But his father, he wants his son to face the fears rather than running away from it. So let's read the box first, means where the information about the author and the story is given in short. I'll read it first. It's page 145. So the second paragraph. In the short story The Elevator, the author explores the themes of irrational fears of childhood. Yeah, when you are young, when you are in that childhood stage, you are many times haunted by many fears which have no logic. Irrational fears. In contrasting the characters of a sensitive boy with an insensitive father. The boy is sensitive and his father is not. And I don't know, nothing is told about the mother. So it could be that he doesn't have a mother, in the sense the mother must have died or they must have got divorced. So he lives with his father. This is a fact, and no mother is there. It clearly shows how the greater pressure exerted upon boys to be strong, brave and not to cry. Yeah. Boys don't cry. This is what in every country boys are told. Girls should cry and not boys. So Martin probably has claustrophobia. Phobia means fear, like hydrophobia, fear of water, begonophobia, fear of beards. So different phobias. So Martin's is an irrational fear of confined spaces. So the lift or the elevator, it's a confined space. And his irrational fears about it, what if it stops, what if he gets isolated in that, is being trapped in the lift. It takes a close look at the psyche of a child and offers an insight into a frightening world. Yeah, the world appears frightening for Martin. Why? In school he is bullied. It happens when you are too timid, you get bullied. But when you give them back, you face your bullies, then they stop bullying you. My granddaughter, she is so small and she is very timid and she gets bullied, and I keep on telling her about my childhood. So when I was in my nursery, so initially I was timid, but when I realized that if you are timid, everyone will take advantage of you, so I faced it, and I became one of the most naughty and what should I say, those fighters rather. I am thin, but I know attacking is the best way of defense. So I started behaving in that way, and I got a notorious name for being the beater or beating up the fellow students. So why I learnt it the tough way? Because if you learn to tolerate, then they'll think you are weak. If you are good, if you are meek, if you are gentle, they'll think, oh, you are weak. You face them and give them back in their coin and they won't trouble you anymore. So I learnt it the tough way, and after that I didn't have any problems. So for Martin also, I think his father is doing the same thing, trying to bring him out of his fear, but he's not rather doing it in the way a father should. It seems as if he's unsympathetic. Maybe this is just a plan to make Martin come out of his shell. It takes a close look at the psyche of a child and offers an insight into a frightening world. The genre of horror fiction rears its eerie head. Eerie means mysterious. As the story ends with Martin trapped in the elevator with a broken leg, unable to escape from the woman. He has his fears about a certain fat lady, and then the end, it's an open end. Author leaves it for you to guess. So now let's start the story. Yes, to my channel up till now, please do, and don't forget to press the like button. The elevator, or rather you can call it a lift. It was an old building with an elevator, a very small elevator, not a big one, a small one, which could carry only 3 people. So the accommodation capacity only 3 people. 12-year-old boy felt nervous in it from the very first day he and his father moved into the apartment. That means earlier he lived somewhere else, and now his father has moved into this apartment, and so he has to take the help of the lift to reach his own flat. Of course, he was always uncomfortable in elevators, afraid that they would fall. So whichever the one in his apartment. Why? Because this was a very old elevator and he was afraid that it might fall, especially unpleasant one. Perhaps this was because of the poor lighting and dirty walls. Yeah, the surroundings also, the walls of the elevator dirty, the lighting is not sufficient. Perhaps it was because of the door which never stayed open long. Another reason, the door did not stay open for long, it shut very quickly and slammed shut with a loud clanging noise. Not only that, to add to it, the noise with which the door shut, it was a clanging noise. As if it was exhausted, as if the lift or the elevator seemed to be tired. First floor, there is a shudder. Then it starts going up. Second floor, there is another shudder. So yes, tired, like when we climb the stairs. Third floor, 3.5 rather, there is a basement, then first floor, ground floor, first floor, second floor, and we are the third floor. So we have to walk, no lift, because in those days lifts were not mandatory when we had purchased it. Now the other ones, all the other apartments close to our house, they have lift. Maybe it was simply too small. It seemed crowded even with only 2 people in it. So 3 people allowed, but only 2 people in it made it seem crowded. The stairs were no better. So if you leave the lift and opt for the stairs, they were also not good. Why? Martin tried them one day after school. So he thought, why don't I take the stairs to my house, to my flat? There were no windows and the lights were not working. So just see how miserable. That means this must be a very cheap and a very negligent type of apartment. No maintenance. Just see, no windows and lights were not working. Martin's footsteps echoed behind him on the cement as though there was another person climbing, getting closer. So Martin and his fears. There is no lightning, the lights are not working. So he feels someone is following him, stalking him. By the time he reached his home on the 17th floor, and it's not a joke, hats off to Martin, he has managed to reach the 17th floor. He was gasping for breath, panting for breath. Martin's father worked at home. So what do you say, work from home? So he worked at home. So when he sees Martin out of breath, so the father naturally asks him. He wanted to know why Martin was out of breath. So why are you panting? He must have said. Why didn't you take the elevator? So this is the best suggestion. There is an elevator. Why don't you use it? Why do you come walking all the 17th floor? He asked, frowning at Martin. You're not only skinny and weak and bad at sport, his face seemed to say, but you're also a coward. So it seems that the father is not happy with Martin. The relationship between the father and the son is not a very pleasant one. The father is very critical about Martin. It seems as if he has become a burden or something in the absence of the mother. So what does he say? What does he want to say? You are not only skinny, that means you are skinny, you are weak, you are not good in sports, and you are also a coward because you prefer the steps rather than a lift because you want to avoid people. After that, so once his father said this, Martin always took the elevator. He would have to get used to it, he told himself, just like he got used to being bullied at school. So he takes it as his fate. Come whatever may, I'll have to use the elevator. I have to get accustomed to it in the same way as he got accustomed to the senior boys or maybe his classmates bullying him. The classmates, this is what happens in school. When they find someone very soft, timid. So yes, not only the seniors, even the classmates, they leave no stone unturned to trouble that person. So he's got used to the bullying. The moment the classmates would see him, oh, here comes Martin, and they would start. And he had to bear it, he had to face it, and he had got accustomed, oh, I know that they will bully me, so let them bully. So in this way only he thought that let me get used to the elevator. But he didn't get used to it. So he got used to the bullying but not using the elevator. Why? He was always afraid that it would stop suddenly and he would be trapped inside it for hours by himself. This was his fear. Claustrophobia. Fear of confined spaces, and what if the lift stops? I'll be in this lift for hours before they rescue me. But it wasn't much better when there were other passengers. So when he was alone, he had one type of fear. When he was with people, he had another type of fear. He didn't like to be close to them. He didn't like to be close to other people. He also disliked the way people tried hard not to look at one another, staring at nothing. Yeah, sometimes people, they come and stand in the lift. Instead of having a look at the ones beside you, they keep staring at something. That he doesn't like, and yet he doesn't like people staring at him also. He is a really strange type of boy. He doesn't like the people tried hard not to look at one another, but when the woman looks at, the woman will come. When the woman looks at him also, he doesn't like it. So he is made of a mixture of opposites. One morning, the elevator stopped at the 14th floor. So from 17th he is getting down, and at the 14th floor it stops. And a fat lady got in. She was wearing an old green coat that ballooned around her. That means she was a fat lady, and naturally the coat seemed to be swelling around her. As she waddled into the elevator, a movement, this is a way someone walks. It was her manner of walking, waddling. Martin was sure he felt it sink under her weight. So once she got into the lift, Martin felt that the lift was sinking under the weight of the fat lady. She's so fat. She was so big that her coat brushed against him and he had to squeeze himself into a corner. So the lift is for 3 people, but this lady is so fat that Martin has to squeeze himself in one corner. That means she took more than 80% of the lift, and in the remaining 20% Martin managed to position himself. There was no room for anybody else, so no room for the third person. The door closed quickly behind her, and instead of facing it, she turned around and stared at Martin. So the moment she entered, the door closed, so she doesn't face the door as the other passengers do, but now she faces Martin and looks at him. He looked at her for a moment. She had large fleshy cheeks and no chin. Actually, maybe her face was so fat, so fleshy, that the chin had disappeared. Just a huge mass of neck, so thick neck here. Her blue eyes were tiny but sharp. They seemed to be boring into Martin's face, as if penetrating into his face and trying to penetrate into his brains as well. Martin looked away, but the woman didn't turn around, so he tries to avoid looking at her, but she keeps on looking at him. Was she still looking at him? And then once after having moved the other way, or rather avoided looking at her, but he wants to know whether she's still. He glanced at her quickly and then looked away again. So yes, he looks and then turns his face. She was still watching him. Yeah, so no giving up, she is going on watching him. He wanted to close his eyes. He wanted to turn around and stare into the corner, but how could he? He couldn't do that. But he wanted to just face the side of the lift rather than allow her to have a look at his face. The elevator creaked down to 12, then 11. The piggy eyes, why? Because she had small eyes. The piggy eyes were still looking at him. She had to be crazy, she must be mad. Why else she would stare at him like this? So she shouldn't be staring at him like this. There's nothing so special about Martin that she has to go on staring on and on. What was she going to do next? Yeah, this is a fear. She is going on staring at me. After that, what will she do? Will she come and catch my hand? Will she try to take me out of the lift? Many irrational fears tormented him. She did nothing. She only watched him breathing loudly until the elevator reached the first floor at last. So finally, the lift reaches the first floor. Till then, from the 14th floor, she kept on looking at him, gazing at him, and breathing loudly. That must be equally uncomfortable for Martin. Martin wanted to run past her to get out, but there was no room. Yeah, he wanted to escape. The moment the lift opened, he wanted to run out, but she was standing, occupying the place, so it was difficult. He could only wait as she turned. He could only wait as she turned and moved out into the lobby. Then he ran. So he just waited for her to get out, and then he runs as if he is afraid. This thought might come into his mind, will she chase me? He didn't care what she thought. So he doesn't care if she thought him to be crazy, if she thought that he was not well behaved, whatever she thought, I don't care. He ran nearly all the way to school. So he seems to be too frightened of this lady. Why? Because she kept staring at him. He thought about her all day. Did she live in the building? He had never seen her before. So today is the first time he sees her. So now this thought troubles him. That means he is worried whether he might meet her again. And the building was not very big. Maybe she was visiting somebody. So is she a visitor or is she a resident of this building? But 7:30 in the morning was too early. So the time when she entered the lift, it was 7:30, he was going to school. So that is hardly a time to visit and then return, because she was going down. That means she had already visited the person. If she had come to visit, she was visiting and returning at 7:30. That seemed unlikely. Martin felt nervous when he got back to the building after school. Why? This fear haunts him. What if I find her there? But why should he be afraid of an old lady? He felt ashamed. Yeah, so this thought comes into his mind. She's after an old lady. Why should I feel afraid of her? He pressed the button and stepped into the elevator, hoping it would not stop. Hoping it would not stop, that means from the first floor, he hopes it would go straight to his 17th floor without stopping. But no, his fears about facing the lady again comes out to be true. It stopped on the 3rd floor. Martin watched the door slide open, revealing a green coat, a piggish face, and blue eyes which were already staring at him as if she knew he would be there. So again his confrontation with that fat lady, and this time at the 3rd floor. So what is she doing in the 3rd floor? She had that time in the morning boarded the lift on the 14th floor, and now he finds her on the 3rd floor. It wasn't possible. It was like a nightmare, so a bad dream. But there she was, going up, said Martin. So he asks her, are you going up? His voice little more than a squeak, the way he speaks as if he's squeaking. She nodded and stepped on. So you want to go up? He's asking her. So she says yes, and she comes inside. The door slammed, the door of the lift making such a noise. He watched her pudgy hands move towards the button. She's pressed not 14 but 18, that means she's going to the top floor. But in the morning she had entered the lift on the 14th floor, but now she's going to the 18th, that means she will be with him till the 17th floor. So no respite for Martin. She wouldn't get down in the 14th floor also. She would go on till the topmost floor. The elevator trembled and began to go up. The fat lady watched him, so she starts her job of watching him. This morning she got on at the 14th floor, so why did she get on the 3rd floor today and go up to 18? So what is this mystery? When he's returning from school, he finds her on the 3rd floor, and now she's going to the top floor. But in the morning it was the 14th floor, so why? Then which floor does she really live? The elevator seemed to be moving more slowly than usual. Yes, it happens. When you want something to go fast, you feel the thing is going very slowly. Martin wanted to press 7 so that he could get out and walk up the stairs, but he couldn't reach the buttons without touching her, and he didn't want to do that. So a thought came into his mind, why don't I get down on the 7th floor and then go walking the remaining 10 floors just to avoid this lady. But there also there is a problem. To press the buttons of the 7th floor, he needed to touch the lady in order, because she was standing in front of the buttons. So he would have to touch the lady, and he did not want to do this. When the elevator stopped on his floor, that means the 17th, she hardly moved out of his way. So she is standing there with her full frame. Poor fellow. He had to squeeze past her, rubbing against her horrible scratchy coat. He was afraid the door would close before he could get out, and the door shut always it was said that the door slammed shut. It did not stay open long enough. So he was afraid that before he got out only the door would shut. She turned and watched him as the door slammed shut. Now she knows I live on the 17th, he thought. So at least earlier he had a consolation that she did not know which floor he lived, but now she knows that he lives in the 17th floor. Have you ever noticed a strange lady in the elevator? He asked his father that evening. So he wants to inquire of his father about this strange lady. Can't say I have, he replied, not looking away from the television. So his father is not really interested in carrying out a conversation. He is watching the television, so without looking at him only he answers. Martin knew that he was probably making a mistake, but he had to tell somebody about the woman. So yes, he had to empty his heart out to someone. And in school he did not have anyone. He was bullied by the classmates or bullied by the boys in school, and here at home also. His father, insensitive father, but felt I have to talk about this. She was in the elevator with me twice today. She just kept staring at me. She never stopped looking at me for a minute. So he is telling what happened to him in the elevator while going to school and while returning. What are you so worried about now? His father said, turning impatiently away from the television. So when he says all these, so now the father, instead of looking at the television, he looks at him. What am I going to do with you, Martin? Honestly, now you're afraid of some poor old lady. You are in school, you are afraid of the boys, and at home you are afraid of that poor old lady. So how can she harm you? This is what he wants to say. I'm not afraid. You are afraid. When are you going to grow up and act like a man? Are you going to be timid all your life? So this is what parents or guardians say when they find the child very timid. Grow up, boy, grow up, girl. I also keep telling my granddaughter, face your troubles. So, but whatever I say in vain, she is that timid girl. Martin didn't want to cry in front of his father, so he waited until he got to his room. So he goes to his room and there only he cries. His father probably knew he was crying anyway. He slept very little. So father knew he was crying, but he doesn't come and try to sympathize with him, offer him confidence. He slept very little. Most probably the lady must be tormenting him even in his dreams. In the morning when the elevator door opened, the fat lady was waiting for him. So maybe she had gone to the 18th floor. From there she comes down to the 17th floor at 7:30 and she's there. Martin stood there unable to move, then backed away. No. So he decides, I'm not going to use the elevator anymore. So he decides to walk. As she saw him, her expression changed. She smiled as the door slammed. Martin started running down the stairs. So he says nothing doing. I'm not going to be her companion in the lift. So he starts taking the stairs. But remember, there was not sufficient lights. The stairs were dark and he fell. And most probably he didn't fall just because it was dark, but because he was afraid and he was trying to escape the lady, and as if he felt she might come out of the lift and chase him. God knows what irrational fear. But he was running down the stairs in the darkness, and that's what resulted in the fall. His father was silent on the way to the hospital. So once he fell, his father had to take him to the hospital. He was not happy, disappointed and angry with him for being a coward and a fool. Irrational fears. So that is why he thinks he is a fool and a coward, not to be able to face an old lady. Martin had broken his leg and needed to walk on crutches. He could not use the stairs now. Was that why the fat lady had smiled? So did she know that when he took the stairs he would meet with this accident, and was it because of that she smiled? Did she know what would happen? Now he is adding all these mysterious things, qualities to that old lady. At least his father was with him in the elevator on the way back from the hospital. So at least he has some confidence that he is not alone in the lift. His father is there with him. There was no room for the fat lady to get in, and if she did, his father would see her and maybe he would understand. So two things. If the lady wanted to enter, she would see the father was with him, so father would also have a look at her and understand why Martin was afraid of her. When he got home, he could stay in the apartment for a few days. The doctors must have advised him rest for at least few days, so he wouldn't have to face the lady. So the more you try to run away from your problems, they come back to you. It's the best thing. The best thing is that face your problems and they will back away. The doctor said he had to rest as much as possible. Martin felt quite safe from the fat lady now. So I don't have to use the lift. I don't have to use the stairs. I'll be at home. So I'm safe from her. Oh, I almost forgot. His father reached out and pressed number 9. Most probably his father wants that he should get over the irrational fear of meeting that old lady in the elevator. So he deliberately presses 9. What are you doing? Asked Martin, trying not to sound afraid. Yeah, he's trying to be very casual. Why are you pressing 9? I promised to visit Mrs. Ullman. Ullman or Ullman, you can pronounce it as you wish, said his father, looking at his watch, and he stepped out of the elevator. So the moment it reaches the 9th floor, he goes out. So now the remaining floor, and she might be coming and occupying the elevator along with him. Let me go with you. I want to visit her too. No, there is no need for him to visit her. He just wants to be with his father. He doesn't want to be in the lift alone. Martin pleaded, struggling to move on his crutches, but the door was already closing. Afraid to be in the elevator. So the father now taunts him. So you are afraid. You want to accompany me because you are afraid to be in the elevator, said his father. Grow up, Martin. The door slammed shut. Martin hobbled to the buttons and pressed 9. Why? Because he wants to get down at the 9th floor only along with his father. He doesn't want to be in the lift alone. But it didn't do any good. The elevator stopped at 10 because it had already crossed 9. So instead of stopping at 9, it stopped at 10. And there, to his horror, what happens? Where the fat lady was waiting for him. So it's very uncanny, strange or weird that the old lady should be wherever he is afraid of her. At this moment he is afraid of facing her, so she is there in the 10th. So she is to be found in the 14th floor, 18th floor, 3rd floor. She goes along with him to the 1st floor. She moved in quickly and he was too slow to get past her in time to get out. So she got in and he couldn't manage to get out to escape her. So now the two of them are there in the elevator. The door closed and the elevator began to move. Hello, Martin, she said and laughed and pushed the stop button. So we are left to think on it that what really happened to Martin. Push the stop button. So what does it seem? What did she do with Martin? Did she keep on staring at him? The stop button, that means it wouldn't go any further. And she must be going on staring at him. I'm sure she wouldn't do anything drastic with the boy. But still. So I'm sure she wouldn't be doing anything horrible with the boy. But yes, he is scared. So this is where this story comes to an end. It's quite an eerie story. We are all full of anticipation as to what really happened to Martin. So, what is the theme? The theme of this story, the elevator, is that we should learn to face our fears instead of running away from it. I told you earlier also how I learnt it the tough way. So the more we try to feel afraid and we try to run away from our fears, the more the fears, like devils, they come and torment us. So yes, be brave and face it. So anyway, I think I have explained it very lucidly, and so bye for the time being. Wait for my next video.